Groovy English Podcast.
Hey there! Welcome back to Groovy English. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Aiden. We share real stories, useful tips, and everyday English to help you grow with confidence.
Wherever you are in your English learning journey, we're glad you're here.
If you're enjoying the podcast, feel free to like, subscribe, or share it with a friend.
Let's get started.
Languages are fascinating, but they can also be hilariously tricky. Even when we know a language well, subtle differences in vocabulary, pronunciation, or cultural context can lead to misunderstandings that are both funny and memorable. These moments often reveal how deeply language shapes our perception of the world, and how easily we can miscommunicate even simple ideas. The beauty of these misunderstandings is that they are a natural part of learning, and they remind us not to take language too seriously. One common source of confusion is words that sound similar across languages, but mean completely different things. These are often called false friends. For example, in English, the word actual refers to something real, but in Spanish, actual means current or present. Imagine a Spanish speaker telling you about their actual job. You might momentarily think they are questioning the reality of their employment, when in fact they are just talking about their current position. These moments of surprise often spark laughter and create memorable learning experiences. Pronunciation differences can also produce amusing misunderstandings. A small change in stress, vowel, or consonant can completely alter the meaning of a word. For instance, in Japanese, the word hashi can mean either bridge or chopsticks, depending on the intonation. So, when someone asks for hashi at a Japanese table, they might be politely requesting chopsticks, while a listener unfamiliar with tone might picture a miniature bridge on their plate. These subtle differences highlight the importance of listening carefully and paying attention to context. Idioms and expressions often lead to hilarious confusion, especially when translated literally. Every language has phrases that make perfect sense locally, but sound absurd to outsiders. Take the French expression appeler un chat literally, to call a cat, which means to speak frankly. Without understanding the idiom, someone might picture a very literal conversation about cats, creating a comical image while trying to interpret it. These idiomatic twists remind us that language is not just words, it's culture, history, and shared imagination. Misunderstandings also happen when words carry unexpected connotations. In English, we might compliment someone by calling them sick, meaning cool or impressive, while in other contexts, the same word can signal illness. Imagine a traveler trying to praise a street performance and being met with confusion or concern. The humor comes from the collision of cultural interpretations, highlighting how playful and flexible language really is. Writing systems and spelling differences can create their own amusing challenges. Homophones, words that sound alike but are spelled differently, can lead to funny mistakes. In English, see and see sound identical, while in other languages, similar situations can result in written messages that are unintentionally humorous. A single letter or accent can completely change meaning, and misreading or miswriting these can produce delightful, memorable mishaps. Grammar quirks are another source of comedy. Word order, gender, and pluralization rules vary widely across languages, and mistakes can generate both confusion and laughter. For example, in German, nouns have genders that might feel arbitrary to learners. Calling a bridge der Brücke instead of die Brücke might not impede understanding, but it can create an amusing sense of linguistic awkwardness that makes the experience unforgettable. Cultural expectations about politeness and tone can amplify misunderstandings. In some languages, directness is valued, while in others, indirectness and subtlety are the norm. A phrase that seems blunt or even rude in one language might be perfectly normal in another. When these differences collide, the result can be unintentionally funny, but it also provides an opportunity to appreciate cultural diversity and the nuances that shape communication. Even technology can contribute to hilarious misunderstandings. Translation apps and autocorrect can produce words or phrases that are technically correct but contextually absurd. A traveler relying on an app to ask for directions might end up requesting something completely unrelated, like, "I want to eat a cloud" instead of "I want to go to the park." While confusing at the moment, these incidents are often retold with laughter and become memorable stories that stick with us. Learning from these funny moments is part of the joy of mastering languages. Each misunderstanding teaches us to pay closer attention, ask questions, and approach communication with curiosity and humility. Humor softens the challenge, making mistakes less intimidating and turning language learning into a playful adventure. The best learners are those who can laugh at themselves while exploring the intricacies of expression, tone, and meaning. Languages are fascinating, but they can also be hilariously tricky. Even when we know a language well, subtle differences in vocabulary, pronunciation, or cultural context can lead to misunderstandings that are both funny and memorable. These moments reveal how deeply language shapes our perception of the world and how easily we can miscommunicate even simple ideas. The beauty of these misunderstandings is that they are a natural part of learning, and they remind us not to take language too seriously. One common source of confusion is words that sound similar across languages but mean completely different things. These are often called false friends. For example, in English, the word actual refers to something real, but in Spanish, actual means current or present. Imagine a Spanish speaker telling you about their actual job. You might momentarily think they are questioning the reality of their employment, when in fact they are just talking about their current position. These moments of surprise often spark laughter and create memorable learning experiences. Pronunciation differences can also produce amusing misunderstandings. A small change in stress, vowel, or consonant can completely alter the meaning of a word. In Japanese, the word hashi can mean either bridge or chopsticks, depending on intonation. Someone asking for hashi at a Japanese table might be politely requesting chopsticks, while a listener unfamiliar with tone pictures a miniature bridge on their plate. These subtle differences highlight the importance of listening carefully and paying attention to context. Idioms and expressions often lead to hilarious confusion, especially when translated literally. Every language has phrases that make perfect sense locally, but sound absurd to outsiders. Take the French expression appeler un chat literally, to call a cat, which means to speak frankly. Without understanding the idiom, someone might picture a very literal conversation about cats, creating a comical image while trying to interpret it. Idiomatic twists remind us that language is not just words, it's culture, history, and shared imagination. Misunderstandings happen when words carry unexpected connotations. In English, we might compliment someone by calling them sick, meaning cool or impressive, while in other contexts, the same word signals illness. Imagine praising a street performance with "that was sick" and being met with concern. The humor comes from the collision of cultural interpretations, highlighting how playful and flexible language really is. Writing systems and spelling differences create their own amusing challenges. Homophones, words that sound alike but are spelled differently, can lead to funny mistakes. In English, C and C sound identical, while in other languages, similar situations produce unintentionally humorous written messages. A single letter or accent can completely change meaning, and misreading or miswriting these can produce delightful mishaps. Grammar quirks are another source of comedy. Word order, gender, and pluralization rules vary widely across languages, and mistakes generate both confusion and laughter. In German, nouns have genders that feel arbitrary to learners. Calling a bridge der Brücke instead of die Brücke might not impede understanding, but can create a sense of linguistic awkwardness that makes the experience unforgettable. Cultural expectations about politeness and tone can amplify misunderstandings. In some languages, directness is valued, while in others, indirectness and subtlety are the norm. A phrase that seems blunt or rude in one language might be perfectly normal in another. When these differences collide, the result can be unintentionally funny, but also an opportunity to appreciate cultural diversity. Even technology contributes to hilarious misunderstandings. Translation apps and autocorrect can produce words or phrases that are technically correct but contextually absurd. A traveler relying on an app to ask for directions might end up requesting something completely unrelated, like, "I want to eat a cloud" instead of "I want to go to the park." While confusing at the moment, these incidents are often retold with laughter and become memorable stories. Learning from funny moments is part of the joy of mastering languages. Each misunderstanding teaches us to pay closer attention, ask questions, and approach communication with curiosity and humility. Humor softens challenges, making mistakes less intimidating and turning language learning into a playful adventure. The best learners laugh at themselves while exploring the intricacies of expression, tone, and meaning. Even simple gestures can cause confusion across cultures. A thumbs-up sign is positive in many countries, but offensive in some, and nodding or shaking the head can mean opposite things in different regions. Pairing words with gestures adds complexity, and observing how people react can produce humorous moments when our assumptions clash with local norms. Word order surprises can also be comical. In some languages, placing adjectives after nouns or verbs before subjects creates structures that sound unusual to English speakers. A literal translation might make perfect grammatical sense in the target language, but appear absurd in English, leading to moments of laughter and learning. Puns and wordplay often cause confusion when translated. A joke that relies on homophones or multiple meanings can become nonsensical in another language. For instance, a pun about bark in English, tree bark versus a dog's bark, loses its humor if translated literally into a language that doesn't share the same ambiguity, resulting in funny attempts to recreate the joke. Names of foods and dishes can trigger hilarious misunderstandings. Certain words for traditional foods sound like everyday objects or strange phrases in other languages. Imagine ordering toad soup, thinking it's a delicacy, only to discover it's actually a delightful dish with a whimsical name. These culinary confusions are a source of both amusement and cultural insight. Learning tones in tonal languages like Mandarin or Thai leads to frequent mishaps. A slight change in tone alters meaning completely, creating situations where a polite question transforms into an unintended statement, often provoking laughter. Mistakes in tone highlight how finely tuned perception must be and how humor can soften the learning curve. Borrowed words and false cognates can also cause miscommunication. English borrows heavily from other languages, and sometimes meanings diverge. A French speaker might say library intending bookstore, confusing an English listener expecting a quiet place to read. These cross-linguistic mismatches are humorous reminders of how languages evolve differently. Using literal translations can backfire hilariously. Students often translate phrases word for word from their native language, producing sentences that sound awkward or nonsensical in English. Saying "I have hunger" instead of "I'm hungry" is a classic example. While grammatically understandable, the phrasing often sparks amusement and creates memorable learning moments. Accent variations can lead to comical ambiguity. Words pronounced slightly differently might resemble unrelated words, leading to funny misunderstandings. For example, sheet and shit in English sound similar, but convey vastly different meanings. Accents, regional differences, and misheard syllables all contribute to humorous moments in language learning. Language learners often misinterpret cultural humor, irony, or sarcasm. What is intended as playful teasing might be taken literally, or literal statements might be mistaken for jokes. These moments can produce confusion and laughter simultaneously, teaching learners to read both words and social context carefully. Borrowed phrases from pop culture can cause hilarious mix-ups. Phrases learned from movies, songs, or memes might be misused in daily conversation, creating humorous misunderstandings. Imagine quoting a famous movie line in the wrong context. It could confuse your audience while giving you and your friends a good laugh. Even polite gestures can become amusing when paired with mispronounced words. Attempting to show gratitude or deference with unfamiliar language structures might produce unintended comedy. Mispronouncing honorifics or suffixes can change the meaning entirely, leaving learners chuckling at their own mistakes while gradually improving. Word choice mistakes often produce comical results. Selecting a word that seems correct but carries a slightly different meaning can create amusing confusion. For example, using embarrassed when you mean ashamed might leave listeners momentarily puzzled. Yet the awkwardness often sparks laughter. These subtle differences highlight the importance of nuance in language learning and make mistakes memorable. Regional slang can be particularly tricky. Words or phrases common in one area might be unknown or misunderstood elsewhere, leading to funny exchanges. Imagine using a casual slang term from London and New York, only to have your listener tilt their head in confusion. These regional quirks add humor while teaching learners that language is living and context-dependent. Homonyms are another source of hilarity. Words that sound the same but have different meanings create opportunities for amusing misinterpretation. For instance, saying bat could refer to an animal or a piece of sports equipment. Depending on context, a simple sentence might conjure wildly different images, and learners often find these moments both frustrating and entertaining. False cognates across languages can make situations absurd. A word that looks familiar in two languages might mean something completely different. Imagine thinking library refers to a bookstore instead of a library in French, or assuming pain means suffering in English when it actually means bread in French. Such mix-ups often result in laughter and reinforce the need for careful observation. Misplaced idioms are a goldmine for humor. Learners sometimes translate expressions word for word, producing sentences that sound odd or funny in the target language. Saying "kick the bucket" literally in another language might provoke confusion unless the listener is familiar with the idiom. These moments reveal cultural gaps and provide memorable learning opportunities. Even polite requests can be misinterpreted. Certain phrasing that is normal in one language may sound rude or overly formal in another. For example, asking, "Could you be so kind to?" might be perfectly polite in British English, but feel excessively formal in casual American conversation. The subtle shifts in tone or formality can create unexpected humor. Mispronunciation often leads to innocent but funny misunderstandings. A single wrong vowel or consonant can transform a sentence into something completely different. For instance, saying sheet instead of its intended word might provoke giggles and requires careful attention to pronunciation and context. Learning tonal languages introduces amusing challenges. In Mandarin or Vietnamese, changing the tone of a word can completely alter its meaning. A single tonal error can turn a simple greeting into a strange statement, leaving both speaker and listener amused and slightly bewildered. Compound words sometimes confuse learners in entertaining ways. A word formed by combining two familiar words might have an unexpected meaning. For example, butterfly in English does not mean butter made of flies. Learners often find these literal interpretations humorous, and remembering the real meaning becomes easier because of the mental image they create. Cross-linguistic puns often produce laughter and confusion. A pun in one language rarely translates directly into another, leading to comical attempts to recreate the joke. Learners may invent absurd phrases, discover unintended double meanings, or misinterpret the original humor, creating moments that are both entertaining and educational. Mistakes with gendered nouns create amusing situations. Languages like German, French, and Spanish assign gender to nouns, which can be confusing for learners. Referring to the table as masculine instead of feminine, or la maison as masculine, may be technically wrong, but it often sparks laughter while highlighting the quirks of grammatical gender. Tense errors can produce comical misunderstandings. Using the past tense instead of the present, or vice versa, may alter the intended meaning in ways that surprise listeners. For example, saying, "I ate lunch tomorrow," confuses time reference and creates a funny mental image of future eating habits. Direct translations of phrases can lead to unintended humor. Phrases that make sense in one language often sound strange when translated literally. For instance, translating "it's raining cats and dogs" word for word might confuse non-native speakers, creating absurd mental images that stick in memory. Politeness markers can be tricky across languages. What is considered courteous in one culture may sound overly formal or even sarcastic in another. Using the wrong politeness level can create awkward but funny exchanges that teach learners cultural nuance as well as language. Contextual ambiguity often produces comedic results. A word may have multiple meanings depending on context, and learners might choose the wrong one. Asking for a bat at a sports store might leave the clerk momentarily puzzled if they think you mean an animal. Context matters, and mistakes become funny learning moments. Numbers and quantities are another source of confusion. Misreading or mishearing numbers can lead to hilariously wrong interpretations. For instance, intending to order 3 sandwiches, but saying 30 can create an unexpected surprise for both parties and a memorable lesson in listening carefully. False politeness cues also cause humor. In some languages, words or expressions designed to sound polite may inadvertently convey irony or sarcasm to learners unfamiliar with nuance. These cultural mismatches are funny, but they also teach awareness of subtleties in communication. Using idiomatic expressions too literally can be comical. Learners might say, "hold your horses," in a situation that literally involves horses, confusing native speakers. The literal application of figurative language often results in laughter and long-lasting memory of the phrase. Word stress can dramatically change meaning. Misplacing stress on a single syllable may transform a common word into an unfamiliar or humorous one. For example, saying "record noun" as "record verb" in the wrong context can cause momentary confusion and a chuckle. False assumptions about cognates can lead to funny mistakes. Assuming a word with similar spelling has the same meaning in your language might result in absurd statements. For example, "eventually" in English means finally, not possibly, which surprises many learners and often provokes laughter when they realize the difference. Compound verbs and phrasal verbs create humor through complexity. In English, "give up," "turn off," or "run into" have meanings that differ from the literal combination of words. Learners translating these literally may invent amusing images that stick in memory. Cultural references often cause misunderstandings. Words tied to films, celebrities, or traditions may be unknown to learners, leading to humorous guesses or misinterpretations. Explaining or discovering the correct reference can be an entertaining and enriching experience. Misreading homographs, words spelled the same but pronounced differently, leads to comical errors. For example, "led the metal," versus led to guide can confuse learners in both reading and conversation. The unexpected twist often makes the mistake memorable. Literal translations of gestures and words together can be funny. Pairing a literal phrase with an exaggerated gesture can result in over-the-top miscommunication. For example, saying, "I'm feeling under the weather," while pointing at the sky may confuse non-native speakers. Misusing polite titles or names produces humorous outcomes. Addressing someone with the wrong form of address, such as Mr. versus Sir, can cause awkward but funny exchanges. Learners often remember these moments vividly because of the social context. Even learning false friends within the same language can be amusing. Words that look similar but differ subtly in meaning across dialects may confuse learners. For instance, pants in American English versus British English creates harmless but funny misunderstandings in conversation. Words borrowed from other languages can surprise learners. The original meaning might differ, leading to humorous interpretations. For example, the English word gymnasium in some contexts might be imagined as an actual arena or temple, sparking confusion and laughter. One of the funniest aspects of language learning is realizing that even seemingly simple words can trip us up. For example, words for everyday objects may have unexpected connotations in another language, and a learner's innocent attempt to describe their surroundings can create hilarious confusion. Imagine trying to compliment someone on their coat, only to accidentally use a word that implies something entirely unrelated, perhaps even embarrassing. These moments highlight the subtle power of vocabulary choices and remind us that even small mistakes can leave a lasting impression in memory. Pronunciation is another area ripe for humor. A single mispronounced vowel or consonant can transform a harmless phrase into something absurd, creating an unexpected comic effect. Take, for example, a non-native English speaker trying to say sheet but pronouncing it as the similar-sounding expletive. The immediate reaction from listeners can be both shocked and amused, and the learner never forgets that specific moment, making pronunciation lessons much more memorable and engaging. Idiomatic expressions are particularly notorious for generating funny misunderstandings. When someone translates an idiom literally, it may conjure images that are nonsensical or amusing to a native speaker. Consider raining cats and dogs in English. A literal translation into another language could produce an image of animals falling from the sky, and while this misinterpretation is incorrect, it is undeniably memorable and often sparks laughter among language learners and native speakers alike. False friends, words that look similar but differ in meaning across languages, frequently result in humorous confusion. Imagine an English learner hearing the word embarrassed in another language, thinking it means something like pregnant or annoyed. The social missteps that can occur in such situations often provide endless stories of awkward, funny, and educational experiences, illustrating the delicate balance between vocabulary knowledge and cultural context. Gestures can amplify the humor in language misunderstandings. Many languages integrate hand movements, facial expressions, or posture into communication, and when learners misinterpret or misuse these signals, the result is often comical. Picture a traveler trying to mimic a gesture they've seen on a video, only to discover it has an entirely different cultural meaning. The laughter that follows not only breaks tension, but creates lasting memories tied to that word or phrase. Cross-cultural humor often emerges when learners attempt to use jokes from one language in another. What might be hilarious in English may make no sense in Japanese, French, or Spanish. The attempts to translate puns or wordplay literally can lead to absurd sentences that are funny precisely because they defy expectation. Learners often recall these attempts for years, both as mistakes and as reminders of the rich, playful nature of language. Homonyms are another source of comic misunderstanding. Words that sound identical but have different meanings can create absurd or amusing situations. Asking for a bat in the context of sports, when someone imagines an animal instead, generates laughter while simultaneously teaching the learner about the importance of context in communication. These kinds of misunderstandings remind learners that vocabulary is not just about memorization, but about situational awareness. Tonal languages add yet another layer of potential hilarity. In languages like Mandarin, Thai, or Vietnamese, a slight shift in tone changes the meaning entirely. A phrase meant to express gratitude could unintentionally imply insult, and the sudden realization of the mistake often results in laughter from both the speaker and listener. Such experiences teach careful listening while demonstrating the surprising precision required in tonal pronunciation. Even simple questions can become unintentionally funny. Misplacing words, tenses, or particles can turn a question into a statement, or vice versa. Asking, "Do you have the time?" but accidentally phrasing it as "you have the time," may produce a look of confusion or amusement from the listener. These small errors illustrate the delicate dance of syntax and meaning, showing that even minor mistakes can create lasting humor. Borrowed words can be unexpectedly confusing. English borrows from many languages, and learners often assume that borrowed words retain the same meaning as in their original language. This assumption can lead to amusing situations where the learner confidently uses a word only to discover it has shifted meaning or nuance, producing both laughter and insight into linguistic evolution. Misunderstandings with numbers often lead to hilarity. A misheard number in conversation can dramatically change the context, such as asking for 3 dozen pastries, but accidentally requesting 30. The exaggerated reactions from sellers or waiters amplify the humor and teach learners the importance of clear pronunciation, especially with digits that sound similar. Misreading homographs, words spelled the same but pronounced differently, produces another type of comedic effect. A non-native speaker might confuse lead, as in to guide someone, with lead as the medal, resulting in sentences that sound absurd but provide a memorable lesson in the complexity of English. Such experiences highlight that spelling alone is not enough. Pronunciation and context are essential. Cultural references can cause amusing misunderstandings when learners try to apply their own cultural lens. References to celebrities, local customs, or historical events might be completely unknown to the learner, prompting guesses that are often wildly off the mark but funny nonetheless. These errors are not just entertaining, they also deepen awareness of the social and cultural dimensions of language. Literal translations of proverbs are another source of humor. Phrases that make perfect sense in one language may appear nonsensical when translated word for word into another. Consider the Spanish buscar el tres pies al gato, literally, to look for 3 feet on the cat, which means overcomplicating something. A direct translation to English without explanation produces vivid, absurd mental images that learners find funny and unforgettable. Slang is a minefield for funny mistakes. Using informal words without knowing subtle connotations can backfire. A learner might attempt to sound cool with a phrase they overheard, only to discover it is outdated, regional, or inappropriate. The resulting awkwardness becomes a humorous story while teaching the learner about the evolution of colloquial language. Misusing politeness levels creates memorable comedy. In languages with formal and informal registers, such as Korean, Japanese, or German, addressing someone incorrectly can produce amusing social situations. The reactions of native speakers, from polite corrections to playful teasing, provide both laughter and practical lessons in cultural etiquette. Pronunciation challenges with clusters of consonants often produce accidental humor. English words like squirrel or thorough are notoriously difficult for learners. Attempts to pronounce these correctly can produce unexpected sounds, and the resulting confusion or laughter reinforces memory more effectively than rote repetition. Idioms about animals are particularly funny when misunderstood. Expressions like "let the cat out of the bag" or "raining cats and dogs" often provoke hilarious literal interpretations. Imagining actual cats falling from the sky or being trapped in a bag creates absurd visualizations that stick in the learner's mind, combining humor with vocabulary retention. Misunderstanding time expressions can create comical scenarios. Phrases like "in a jiffy" or "over the weekend" might be interpreted literally or incorrectly, leading to amusing confusion. A learner might show up too early or too late, sparking laughter while reinforcing contextual learning. Even greetings can be a source of humor. In some cultures, formal greetings are essential, while in others, casual expressions are sufficient. Misapplying these greetings can lead to awkward but funny moments, reminding learners that language is as much about social norms as it is about words. Finally, the cumulative effect of these misunderstandings is not embarrassment but connection. Humor bridges cultural gaps and fosters empathy, making language learning a shared, enjoyable experience. Each funny misstep becomes a story, a lesson, and a memory that enriches both language mastery and personal growth. These funny misunderstandings highlight the joy of language learning. They remind us that mistakes are not failures, but playful opportunities to explore culture, nuance, and expression. Laughing at missteps strengthens memory, reduces fear of error, and fosters a more relaxed, adventurous approach to communication.
Your English is shining brighter by the minute. Hit that next video to keep leveling up your skills. Or dive into our other episodes for more secrets to talk like a pro. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to join the Groovy English crew.